We're talking with David Frum, the senior editor of The Atlantic, theatlantic.com, and his new piece, How to Build an Autocracy. So if money isn't the reason why all these Republicans, and this is just one example, we could come up with dozens, if it's not the reason why Republicans are, and some Democrats are dancing to the tune of industry, then what is?
You have to accept the degree to which, look, I realize there are powerful reasons why both Republicans and Democrats want to place Donald Trump in succession as just another Republican. Maybe a little more vulgar than some of his predecessors, but essentially continuous. And that's really not true. At least that's the argument of my piece, the contention of my piece, is that is not true. This is a discontinuous event. And a lot of the reasons why the system has failed to react effectively to him is because Republicans and Democrats, for their own reasons, each for their own reasons, won't accept how discontinuous this is. So Democrats, because especially on the left, they say he's another Republican. He's as more oafish and overbearing and gross than Marco Rubio, but the same thing. And therefore, we're going to beat him using the same ways. And so a lot of the first resistance to Donald Trump focuses on the traditional Democratic themes. And unsurprisingly, they're working even less well than they would work against Marco Rubio. And on the Republican side, many people are making adjustments to Trump because they will say, well, he's kind of oafish and gross, but we can count on him to support our pre-existing agenda. So we'll work with him. And they are also discovering that's not true. Donald Trump does not keep faith on the traditional Republican agenda. He is a new kind of thing. And the argument of this, you need to understand, says my article, that Donald Trump has a lot more in common with Viktor Orban in Hungary, with the post-Mandela rulers, with Jacob Zuma in South Africa, with Duterte in the Philippines, with Erdogan in Turkey, than he has with Marco Rubio or Scott Walker or Ted Cruz.
I agree. But much like, if we want to wander into the realm of hysteria, much like Hitler and Mussolini and Franco, none of those guys could be where they are if they didn't have at least titular support among the essentially the elite power structure of their countries.
Well, first, I think those analogies are extremely counter-helpful to understanding what is going on today. And that's, again, one of the points of the argument, that you're not going that if you are training your eye to look for mobs in the streets, uniformed men, ranting dictators, then you're going to miss the dangers to your society because it's not going to look like that. We don't live the way we did in the 1940s. So one of the things I talk about in the article is you're not going to have stormtroopers taking control of sidewalks in societies where people don't use sidewalks. Authoritarianism goes where the people are. And where's the traffic? It's online. And so the act of the one tiny little bit of the analogy I'll allow is that one of the things that historical authoritarianism tries to do is drive people out of the public realm into the private realm. So if the public realm is the town square, then you try to take over the town square. If the public realm is Twitter and Facebook, then that's what you try to take over, and you don't worry about the town square. And let me tell you a story that I think illustrates what I have in mind.
We just have 5 seconds.
And I'll tell it to you later.
Let's pick the story up on the other side of this break, because we're gonna disconnect from free speech, or we're gonna reconnect with our commercial stations here. And David, you were just pointing out that basically I'm coming out of this apparently kind of old political worldview of
let's call it familiar.
Money politics, power politics, and you're saying Trump has broken the mold. This is a completely different thing. This is more like Turkey than it is like anything we've ever seen in the United States.
Hungary is really the example. That I spent a month in Hungary in the spring of 2016, and you could see the Orban method, and the Trump method is reminiscent. So Hungary's a member of the European Union. It's a signatory to the European Convention on Human Rights. It's in many ways they have continued to have elections, and they're free and more or less fair. And there's no violence. Orban has not wrongfully arrested anybody.
No brown shirts.
Yeah. Much less murdered anybody. But it's not a free country. And the best thing that was the most helpful thing that somebody said to me when I was there that sort of helped me to understand what Trump is doing. The benefit of controlling a modern bureaucratic state is not the ability to persecute the innocent. That's too dangerous and risky. It is the ability to protect the guilty. And you see so much of the Trump method is about that. Is you have 3 people who have broken the same rule. The 2 who have not been your friends get the law. The one who has been your friend gets protection. That's why this nomination to be U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York is so important. That Donald Trump, it looks like he is about to replace somebody who's investigating sexual harassment and other wrongdoing at Fox News with, it looks like, Roger Ailes' own personal defense attorney.
Really?
Yes. So that's the leading contender to be the new U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York.
Whoa. And Fox News was critical to Trump winning the presidency.
That's how this is going to work. And Fox News never wrote a check to Donald Trump, but then again, it didn't need to. Here's the story I was going to tell you. This is an example of taking over public spaces. We would all understand if, supposing there were a pro-Trump columnist at the Washington Post, and the Washington Post, and he was caught, or she was caught doing something wrong, sexually harassing somebody or taking money, and the Post fired that person for misconduct. And Trump said, "I'm going to deploy the power of the presidency against you unless you reinstate that person." Well, we'd all be up in arms, that we would see that can't happen in a free country. But that's exactly what happened on Twitter before and after the election. But 2 weeks before the election, Twitter closed the accounts of 12 people connected with various kinds of white nationalist causes and their organizations. And maybe let's leave aside whether that was a wise thing for Twitter to do. They clearly have the right to do it. It's a private platform. The Trump people, I knew from my own reporting, I had got quite close to the Trump campaign at that point, were extremely upset about this. Many of these people had very close relationships to people at the Trump campaign. And they felt that Twitter had done something terribly unfair and wrong, and in fact, they wanted to apply antitrust power to Twitter afterwards, because they were going to argue that Twitter was a common carrier, and just as a train can't refuse to carry you if they don't like your looks, so Twitter shouldn't be able to refuse to carry you if they don't like your politics. 2 days, or about within a week of the election, Donald Trump has a meeting with senior executives of technology companies. The Twitter people are not invited, which is a pointed slap at Donald Trump's favorite technology company. And the same day as the meeting, Twitter reinstated all the white nationalist accounts and verified them. That Donald Trump had got them their platforms back in a media company. And you have to think of this. And again, for those of us who are older, it's hard to bear this in mind. The most important media company in America is not the New York Times, it's not CNN, it's Facebook. Yeah. And the top 10 include names like Twitter and Reddit. That's how Americans today get their information. And the National Enquirer, the Trump campaign, the Trump presidency, it gets mad at CNN, it gets mad at the New York Times, but it is endeavoring to control Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, and the National Enquirer. So
we just have a minute or two left, David. We all know what fascism is, or arguably. I mean, so is there a name for this?
No, there is not.
Authoritarianism?
I call it kleptocratic authoritarianism, which isn't a very good name. It is the question, but the question is not what is it, as I say at the end of the article. The question is, what is it doing? Let's describe its actions. We can categorize it later. Let's analyze the nature of the threat, and then let's prepare as citizens. Because there are means of resisting, but don't look to the Congress for them. Don't look to the federal bureaucracy. You have to look to yourself.
So the way to resist is at the ballot box?
It's through various kinds of collective organizing leading up to the ballot box. Meetings matter more than protests. Voting matters above all. Being an informed and active citizen connected to others. Being connected, many of the things that make Trumpism possible arise from the isolation that so many people have in the modern world. There are all kinds of studies. We have fewer friends than our parents did. We participate less in events. Yeah, we spend more time with screens, and that is what has made us vulnerable. And if we want to roll this back, we have to become better citizens.
Wow. I flew back from Minneapolis yesterday, and it just suddenly hit me during the flight. The guy next to me was obsessively playing chess on his phone. And I remember 20, 30 years ago, sitting on a plane, you'd talk to the people around you. The whole plane would be filled with conversation. Right. Now, the entire plane was silent. Everybody was staring at the screen.
The most harrowing story in today's New York Times is a story about a farmer who has lost 2 of his children to heroin addiction, and has a third who's still alive but is also an addict. And the Times reporter got that story by chatting with the waitress at the coffee shop, told him about the situation. Do any of us talk to the people, or do we stare at our black mirrors?
There you go. David Frum.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
David is senior editor with The Atlantic, theatlantic.com, and you can tweet him at David Frum, and his piece is How to Build an Autocracy. It's brilliant. Check it out.